Hi, Pastor Nathan Decker with your hashtag Better Together devotion for today. And this week I'm talking about creating within your heart a prayer closet, creating within your life, your practice, your essence, space for the holiness of God to enter into your being, your life, a way for you to move forward in spiritual growth. Yesterday I talked about the physical world and the space that we have to create around us. There's another whole world that we have to acknowledge as well, and that is that we have to, as a part of being human and being the way that God the Creator created us, we have to acknowledge our emotional landscape. Now that's a mouthful, but think about it this way. Your emotions, we've described them sometimes as like a roller coaster of highs and lows, twists and turns. They get hot, they get cold. We use all kinds of landscape metaphors, if you will, to talk about our emotions. We talk about being dry or being wet, and all these other terminologies that we often are using about environmental things. We talk about our emotions through them. So acknowledging where you're at emotionally is a big step in connecting with God. The Apostle Paul talked about this, and he had his own struggles. And in the book of Romans, as he wrote to the church there at Rome, he said in chapter 7, verse 15, I do what I don't want to do, and I don't do what I want to. Can you hear the frustration? Can you hear the screw turning? Can you hear all of that? There's emotion within our spiritual journey. We were created to be emotional creatures. We weren't created to be Mr. Spock off Star Trek or some other thing. We weren't supposed to be this person who doesn't have an emotional reaction to things that are happening around us. God created us in such a way that a big part of our brain and a big part of who we are is an emotion. And not just one emotion, but tons of emotions all at once, gushing out like some kind of glacier calving into the ocean. We just let it go, and it's there, and we have to acknowledge it. But here's the thing. When we take the time in our prayer closet, in our heart of hearts, when we have that space that we set aside as holy, and when we start going into our brain and going into our heart and going into our emotions and saying, there you are, anger, I know you. I know what you're about even. There you are, despair, depression. I'm naming you. I know where you are. There you are, joy, because of what happened to you this morning. There you are. I name you. By naming and acknowledging the emotions, in many ways, what we're doing is we're looking at the landscape that's painted before us. And by doing so, it's not nearly as scary. It's not nearly as unknown. It's not nearly as convoluted and swirls, but becomes greater focused and easier to navigate. God gave us emotions to help us know where we are. They should be a part of our spiritual journey. And when you're coming into a mindful place in your prayer closet, one of the first things that you need to do internally is acknowledge the emotional landscape that you're in. And by doing so, you'll get closer to Christ and each other, better together. Amen.